Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Prodigal. This will be Part 5, Chapter 5, entitled Shattered Glass and Viridian Hues. The newest rumor was that he had been a traitor who had been selling information to the League of Villains. Shota had to give Bakugo another weekend house arrest when he attacked Monoma for that one. The rumors that had been flying around UA since Midoriya's disappearance were countless. Some declared he was kidnapped, some hypothesized he'd been murdered, and the staff was trying to keep it under wraps. With each blow to the kid's reputation, Shota added another tally to the number of punches Nezu was receiving when he figured this whole situation out. However, time had not revealed any new clues. On the contrary, things had only grown more confusing over the past 4 months. Bakugo had somehow managed to temper down, despite the obvious tragedy of the disappearance of his rival/friend. Shinso had fit into their class like he was always meant to be there, and while Midoriya was missed, their education continued as normal. Nezu was attempting to cover up Midoriya's career at UA as if he never existed. Yagi was unfazed, but it was the kind of calm that was practiced, forced, and Shota would have had to have been an idiot to not notice how much time he was spending with Mirio. The extended third year had been excused from most of the training exercises due to the loss of his quirk, but something had changed not long after Midoriya had left. Much like how the Green Bean had always been sprinting after All Might's heels, Mirio was going on long runs with him in the mornings and worked at the gym with him in the evenings. Nothing made any sense. It made Shota want to scream. Afternoon light hit his eyes, and he cringed. He knew better than to grade in the teacher's lounge in the latter part of the school day. His burning eyes shuddered. "All right, Aizawa," Yagi asked from his desk on the opposite side of the room. He nodded. "I just need to reapply my eye drops. I'll be back. Don't touch my papers." The retired pro chuckled softly as Shota exited the warm room to walk to the bathroom. At the corner, he was almost run over by a blur of tan trench coat and black hair. "Tsukauchi?" The detective stumbled, grabbing the wall to keep from falling over in his hurry. "Where's Yagi?" Shota's brows furrowed. Almas's eyes were red, and his pale skin was almost white. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his hair was wildly unkempt. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, and the fear in his eyes was mixed with a righteous anger. "Are you all right?" "Where's Toshinori?" he asked again, this time with more bite. "Lounge," he replied swiftly, and the detective took off down the hall. Shota blinked in confusion, but continued his mission to the bathroom. The last time he had heard from Namasa, he was on a case concerning some of Stain's frantic followers. Apparently, his team had been getting intel from a local vigilante, and they had made more progress with his help in 2 weeks than they had in 6 months. He did not know what would have prompted him to come in a hysterical and sleep-deprived state in search of All Might, save their firm friendship, except that he had heard from Hizashi's gossip rants during dinner several weeks ago that they had a falling out, and it was causing Yagi a great amount of stress. Shota was glad he was not involved in Hizashi's gossip. He did not care if the retired number 1 had drama with his friend or how many men Nomuri was sleeping with. He carefully applied his medicine to his eyes in the restroom and felt immediate relief. Blinking several times, he meandered back to his workspace. He turned the same corner and instantly heard raised voices. "Bastard! He's gone, Yagi! He's been missing for 4 days, and I can't find him!" The pure, visceral fury that was coming from the normally so collected detective was frankly very concerning. Shota paused outside the lounge door and leaned against the wall to hear. He wasn't normally an eavesdropper, but something made him stay. "Masa, are you all right? I haven't seen you in months. You haven't talked to me, and I thought you were—" Yagi's worried tone was interrupted by a tsunami of rage. "Don't you dare start, Yagi. I'm so pissed right now. You're lucky I didn't bring a warrant for your arrest. Now where is he?" "Why would I know where he is? I haven't seen the boy since he left." Shota could only blink in shock. What the hell? "Masa, you need to calm down." "Calm down? Calm down? Is that what you told Midoriya?" Something horrible wormed its way into Shota's chest. The hands stuffed in his pockets began to shake. Problem child. The 2 men inside that room knew what happened to his kid. Yagi knew what had happened to his kid. "Did you tell him it was all going to be okay?" Namasa spat. "Did you tell him he shouldn't be upset or make a big deal about it? Come on. What? What did you say to that 16-year-old child when you stripped away his will to live?" Shota was going to be sick. He grabbed the wall to steady himself. None of this was making any fucking sense. 4 months of contradictory statements and rumors, and now this furious confrontation that he had no context for. Nezu was lying to him, and the rest of the staff. He was certain of that. Yagi had known this whole time and had not said a word. It was like he dropped Midoriya and immediately turned to Mirio without a second thought, and... What was going on? Aizawa-sensei? Speak of the devil. Mirio, in all his golden glory, was sauntering down the hallway toward him. Have you seen All Might? I have a question about one of our hero assignments. Shota was trained to detect lying like a hound smelling meat, and Mirio stank of deception. He narrowed his eyes and hid his scowl in a scarf. He's having a riveting conversation with Detective Naomasa. The 18-year-old's eyes widened. What? He's... Masa, what are you talking about? Yagi's tense tone was filled with more than just confusion. There was true fear in it, too, as if something the detective had said resonated with something that was dangerous, something to do with Aizawa's problem child. Give me one good reason, Yagi, one good damn reason why I shouldn't take you straight to the station for neglect and child abuse. And that made Shota's anger explode. He did not have all the information, but the broken pieces he could deduce led to one conclusion. He did not care about specifics or the details. He knew one thing for certain. Toshinori Yagi had hurt Izuku, and Toshinori Yagi was going to pay. Sensei, He pushed straight past Mirio, throwing open the lounge door. It crashed into the wall, but the sound it made did not overwhelm his poisonous hiss. Where the fuck is my kid? Naomasa was standing over Yagi's desk, the former pro sporting a bloody nose with matching crimson on the detective's knuckles. The officer was breathing heavily, and in the few moments he had been in there, his condition seemed to have worsened. Tears glistened in his eyes, as his chest heaved with effort. Yagi looked torn between horrified confusion and concern for his friend. Shota, frankly, did not care what Yagi was feeling. Shota, frankly, wanted to punch Yagi in the face, too. Naomasa stepped back, shoulders falling. Ask him. Masa. What is he talking about, Toshinori? Shota was a tragically patient person. Mineta would not still be in his class if he were not. However, his goodwill and silent demeanor both fell away in the face of this atrocity. His kid, the same problem child he had cried about on 3 separate occasions since his disappearance. The same problem child whose letter was tucked into a precious spot in its dresser. The same problem child whose classmates still turned to in class without him being present. The same problem child who Shota adored and never told, left him thinking he was nothing more than a nuisance, nicknamed him something that would only bolster his insecurity, and the same problem child that Shota missed more than he ever thought possible, had been dragged through the mud because of this, had lost good standing in UA, had been cast out and insulted as a traitor or a deserter, a coward, and now, there was someone to blame. Shota began to shake. The same man who had sworn to protect Izuku, to care about him and train him, had hurt him. Abused, Naomasa had said. Yagi, who he had assumed was closer to Midoriya than anyone, had broken that bond and abandoned him. How? How could he look at precious, cherished, brave, foolish, reckless, and wonderfully heroic Midoriya Izuku and just let him go? Detective Naomasa is just confused. Yagi glanced back and forth between him and the officer. However, halfway from Naomasa to him, his eyes widened at Mirio. He's not well. Oh, that was a stutter. Yagi always stuttered when he lied. Not well? The detective repeated slowly, left eye twitching. I'm the one who's not well. Detective, maybe it's best if you went to see Recovery Girl. Mirio's gentle advice, which Shota would have agreed with had this whole situation not been so questionable, was cut off by Naomasa's bitter laughter. He grabbed the side of Yagi's desk as he doubled over. Croaking chuckles filled with the wetness of oncoming tears. Shota took a step closer to try and steady him, but Naomasa straightened a second later, face gone horribly cold. The normally soft and compassionate officer had been replaced by a man with hatred written into every facet of his expression. Don't you dare try and tell me what to do, Mirio Togeda. You have no right to stand there, one for all in your veins. Don't. He bit himself off, suddenly, closing his eyes tightly. When he reopened them, he stared at Mirio. Not really sorry, but like someone was forcing him to apologize. Someone whose heart was softer than even this kind officer. Who did that remind Shota of? No, I'm not. Not at you. I'm sorry. I'm angry at you, but it's not your fault. It's yours. And here he turned back to his friend. Fuck you, Yagi. Fuck you. Fuck your decision. Fuck your hero status. Nana would be so disappointed in you. All Might reeled back in shock. Now, Masa! Don't, Tsukauchi barked. You dare. You listen to me, All Might. He spat the title like it was the name of a supervillain, and Shota was inclined to agree with the sentiment. You broke the greatest kid to ever exist. I want you to know that. However, though the world doesn't deserve it, he's rather good at putting himself back together like shattered glass." Naomasa growled, hands clenching into fists at his side. His eyes flashed with more anger than Shota had ever seen on the man. "He's going to be the greatest underground hero that the world has ever seen, and he's going to do it all without you. Do you hear me? I hope you look back on what you did and regret every second of it. I hope you and all for one are very happy together because you've both inspired the sparks of villainy into children who want to help people and are cast aside by the heroes who swore to protect them." The detective glared at the former number one, not a single hint of the friendship they used to be able to boast about. It lay in shambles at their feet, mixing with the drops falling from Yagi's nose. Shota was caught in a crossfire of confusion and catastrophe that was filled with information he was not privy to. He was floundering in a tsunami of chaos and righteous fury that revolved around his problem child, caused by the horrors of others, which resulted in his pain. "I'm warning you, Toshinori. If I find out he's hurt, if he's been kidnapped or worse, and it's your fault, I will murder you." Shota knew, in some detached part of his brain that was not filled to the brim with buzzing explosives and frantic heartbeats, that was a blatant threat and he should restrain Naomasa. He did not. "I will kill you myself, and no one will ever find your body. I will personally release all for one so that he can take one for all, and give it to me so I can obliterate your wasted corpse so that no one will ever remember you." He took another few strides to reach Naomasa's side. He clasped his shoulder. "Detective," Shota rasped, even though he agreed. He knew that if this continued, it would only create conflict. He might never get the answers he wanted if a real fight broke out, and Mirio looked like he was about to launch himself at the officer. Naomasa came back to himself slightly. He ran a shaking hand through his hair and blinked away his tears. "If Izuku becomes the world's greatest villain, there will be no one to blame except you." He stormed out with the fury of God in his form, and no one tried to stop him. Shota had too many questions and no idea where to start. No, that wasn't right. "Did you hurt Midoriya?" It was scathing, like bubbling acid. It burned against his tongue and it hit the floor, encompassing Shota's world in flames. He could not begin to describe the anger that was sparking inside of him. It was more than any he'd ever experienced before, righteous and ugly and murderous and desperate and sad. God, so sad. Only Oboro had inspired this kind of anger, paired with grief. Yagi sputtered in guilty surprise. "It's not what you think. Tsukauchi is not a liar, All Might, and he does not meddle in the realm of exaggeration." Shota was sick of being lied to, of being deceived, especially when it came to one of his kids. And yes, Midoriya was still one of his kids. He would always be Shota's kid, his problem child. Even when he was called a traitor and murderer and coward, he would always hold the biggest place in his cold heart, especially when it came to Midoriya. "Answer the damn question." "Sensei, you have to understand." And the fact that Mirio tried to interject made it worse because that meant there were others, people that Midoriya had considered his friends. And oh God, was this Bakugo's fault too? Involved who knew and had not told him. How many? How many of them had been laughing at Shota's sorrow, had been celebrating in his devastation? How many had seen him mourn the loss of a child and done nothing? "You, shut up," he hissed, curses brimming on his tongue like liquid lightning. "The fact that you had anything to do with this makes me angrier than I can say. I'm only going to ask you one more time, Yagi. What the fuck happened to Midoriya?" And here lies the kicker. Those blue eyes stared back into his ebony ones with pure conviction. And Shota did not have a truth-telling quirk, but he knew a genuine belief when he saw one. Toshinori Yagi looked at him and stated, with 100% surety and confidence, "It was for the greater good." And then Shota socked him in the nose. Patrol. That was his punishment. Time away from Eri on fucking patrol. If he wasn't already planning on murdering Nezu, he would have spent the next 3 meetings glaring a hole in his furry skull. Yagi had been sent to Recovery Girl, who had taken one look at him, the blood caking Shota's scarf, and his knuckles, and had given the retired number 1 the scariest smirk that Shota had ever seen. She did not heal him, and Aizawa was reminded that yes, Chiyo was good people. Seeing Yagi walk down the halls toward his next training exercise with a bloody rag held to his nose was not nearly enough to satisfy his anger, however. Shota knew that he had been going to meet Mirio, that he used to do the same with Midoriya, that he had dropped the kid like he meant nothing. Like Midoriya Izuku could ever mean nothing. He was distracted, a dangerous mistake to make on patrol, especially as an underground hero. The trafficking ring he had been following was full of idiots, but even idiots can get the upper hand if the hero is preoccupied. The trio he was pursuing jumped him 10 minutes into his mission. He was glad that none of his students were there to witness their pro-hero teacher go down like a sack of potatoes. He was unconscious in seconds. When he woke up, it was to the sound of two distinct voices arguing over whether or not to kill him. Delightful. "He's a pro-hero, Nochi," the deeper voice was saying as the fuzziness in Shota's head began to clear. "Oh, says the one who brought him here," his partner, a woman, growled back. "I didn't know he was a racerhead, Nochi," she groaned in reply, and there was the sound of someone getting slapped. "Shut up! We can't even use him, Machida. He's not quirkless, our buyer won't want him." Shota stiffened, so he was right. They were kidnapping quirkless people. Over 10 cases now of missing persons had been filed, but of course, since they had no quirks, most people did not care that they had disappeared. Naomasa had sent him the information roughly 2 weeks ago and told him that he had several men on it already, but he could always use some professional input. Shota had accepted, anything to distract him from the horrible web of lies that was UA. He was going to have to make Naomasa pay him back for his medical bills after this. He could already tell his ankle was broken, as well as several ribs. God, he hated being kidnapped. But he's a pro, Nochi. And if our information's correct, then he's the one housing the girl from the Chiseki raid. I agreed to take quirkless scum, you idiot. No one notices when they go missing. And she spat they, like it was a reference to something disgusting. He sometimes forgot how prejudiced the world had become against those without powers. But this guy has people who know him, who care, and this isn't the League of Villains. We don't have some awesome teleportation quirk to get out of any trouble the pros might bring. "So we kill him?" Machida asked, boredom filtering into his tone. Shota kept his head down as he blinked. He was tied to a chair, very original, and his capture weapon and belt were gone. He could taste blood in his lips, and the telltale feeling of it dried and caked on his nose. Broken. He and Yagi were matching now. Just thinking of any similarities between him and that bastard made him growl. "Oh, he's awake." The man clapped once and strode toward the chair. No use in keeping up his charade. Shota lifted his head and licked his busted lips. "Evening." The pair were wearing matching white suits with different patterns of lines around the waist, collar, and wrists. Nochi's vibrant yellow eyes matched her electric hair, and Machida looked like some failed Halloween art piece with green eyes and orange hair. The man's hands were inky black, but they caught the light falling from the bulb above him to make iridescent waves on his fingers, a quirk to do with oil. He didn't have a read on her quirk, but if he were to make a guess, it had something to do with toxic chemicals. Many times, physical traits could expose the truth behind someone's power. "It's early morning, actually," Nochi drawled, picking at her nails. "You've been out of it for about 4 hours. One of our boys gave you a little too much sleepy stuff." "Why are you kidnapping quirkless people?" Shota snapped, testing his restraints. Whoever had tied the rope was an expert. "Who is your buyer?" Nochi moved next to her partner. She stopped down to tap his nose condescendingly. "You don't get to ask the questions here, sweetie." "I thought we weren't going to ask him anything." Machida barked. She rolled her eyes. "Shut up, Machi!" "Is it for testing?" Shota continued as if he had not been denied. "Do you kidnap them because they can't fight back?" "Oh, don't say that." She clicked her tongue. "We found one a few days ago who was plenty of fight in him, didn't we? Took out Tsukauchi like it was nothing. It was shocking. I didn't know they could do anything other than killing themselves." It was a horrible sort of joke, one that he had heard variations of for years. Shota hated a lot of things, but one of the ones he despised the most was the blatant stigma against the quirkless. Society deemed them worthless, useless, mistakes, and self-fulfilling prophecy created a diminishing group of depressed and potentially villainous people who had nothing to lose. It was one of Hero Society's greatest failures. "Yeah, but he quieted down after Masaki shot him a few times." Machida rubbed the back of his neck. "Are you torturing them?" The pro tried to roll his shoulders and hissed in pain. "I'd be a little more concerned about yourself, Eraserhead," Nochi purred. "Besides, we still haven't decided if we're going to—" An alarm went off, and the room's light turned red. Both villains straightened. Machida jerked out a phone and began typing away. Nochi opened her mouth to ask what was going on when the wall behind him exploded. Concrete flew across the room and embedded itself into the opposite barrier, sending dust and debris everywhere. It took Nochi with it. Shota immediately tensed as a scream pierced the air. Another body soared past his left shoulder in the same path as the demolished wall and collapsed against the rocks, blood spurting from several places. "Man, y'all sure are good at destroying your own companions, aren't you?" The new voice was almost drowned out by the roar that followed. "Come back here, you brat!" Another sound wave tore through the wall on his other side, and Machida just managed to dodge out of the way. He sprinted to his fallen partner with a yell of her name. Shota struggled to turn around to find the new components in this equation, but found it impossible. He cursed his aching arms. "All right, that was just rude." The newcomer returned, sounding genuinely offended that the third villain had just tried to blow him through a wall. You seem a little uptight. Have you tried therapy? Yoga? I have a pretty swell... Whoa! Machida had launched a wave of oil out of his fingers, confirming Shota's hypothesis. There was a shout of pain, and a thud. The red-haired criminal yelled. Fukuda! Geez, you got him good, Machi, whatever your name is. The voice sounded closer this time. It was young and hoarse, laced with carefully concealed pain. Shota wondered if it was one of the quirkless captives. Whoever they were, maybe they could get him out of these stupid ropes. His vision swam. Oh, and maybe treat his concussion. A figure sprinted past his left, skillfully scaling the pile of concrete like a dancer. It blurred, both in reality and due to Shota's crumbling eyesight, launching toward the remaining villain and slamming him into the ground. Machida collapsed, but released a wave of oil toward the stranger's face. He dodged enough so that it landed on his shoulder and let out a yelp, but he dropped to his knees and landed another expertly placed blow to Machida's face. He dropped, head lolling to the side. The man stumbled to his feet, holding his side and letting out a heaving breath. Now, I just need to find my phone. Shota blinked, trying to clear his line of sight. Hey, you. What the hell is going on? The person froze, broad shoulders stiffening. Hey, are you... He turned, and Shota's vision tunneled. The hair was shorter, but it was still soft viridian green and made of wild curls. His skin was tanner, but it still sported those endearing freckles. One of his eyes was white, and a scar tore through the middle, from his hairline to his chin, but they were still wide and kind and currently filled with disbelief. He was taller, bigger, as if he had finally filled into the form he'd been training for since the start of his first year. But no matter the differences, Shota would know that face anywhere. Problem child? The kid didn't reply. He seemed overcome with shock, but he stumbled forward, pulling a knife from his side and moving behind his chair to cut Shota's ropes. Shota almost ordered him to stop, because to do so he had to leave his line of sight, and all he wanted to do was stare at Izuku for the rest of his life. Problem child, are you all right? Where the hell have you been? Are you hurt? Midoriya, talk to me. The 16-year-old let out a shaky breath as he rounded the chair to release his teacher's feet. Shota pulled his hands from behind and instantly reached forward to grasp the kid's shoulders. Why the fuck was Midoriya worried about his tied ankles? All Shota could think about was the white orb of his right eye, the scar traveling down his face, the chopped hair and haunted look in his student's gaze. Midoriya. Problem child. Stop. He had never been good with raised voices. Shota knew that, but he still felt guilty when the kid gasped and shrunk in on himself. Hey, it's just me, kid. It's Aizawa. Midoriya kept his head down. That just would not do. He had gone 4 months without seeing that brilliant stare. He would not let it escape when it was back within his reach. Kid, look at me. Hey, Izuku. And finally, he looked up. Hi, Sensei. 4 months. 4 fucking months of scrambling for answers and hanging on to fraying threads of hope and scrounging for any trustworthy information he could get his hands on, and there he was. A little broken, and a little bruised, but wholly Izuku, and Shota could not stop himself from surging forward and bringing the kid into the fiercest hug he could remember giving. He wrapped his arms so tightly around the kid that he heard Izuku gasp, but he did not let go. He could not let go, not now. Not when he could finally touch him again and fully grasp the truth that he was alive and okay and safe in Shota's arms. His bloody fingers carted through those brilliant viridian curls. You're here. Yeah, I'm here, Izuku rasped. I'm here, Sensei. And wow, did that title coming from those lips almost make him weep? Yes, it did. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 5 of Prodigal. Chapter 6 will be next. I really love the rage in this chapter. This fic makes me happy just because we get parental Tsukauchi and Aizawa, and those fics, for some reason, always make me feel whole, despite the amount of angst in this fic. All Might getting basically punched out by Tsukauchi and Aizawa is just therapeutic to me at this point. I hope you all are enjoying, though, as a whole. Let me know your thoughts and reactions to this chapter and the fic in general. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.